Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. No way. That's the president's message to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The White House will not cooperate in the impeachment probe. The Democrats strike back with a subpoena, while new details emerge about the first whistleblower. So what's next? I'm going to talk about the legal consequences of what's being called impeachment. Charlene Aaron has the details of this escalating firestorm.
In an 8-page letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the White House declared it will not cooperate with the impeachment probe.
You have designed and implemented your inquiry in a manner that violates fundamental fairness and constitutionally mandated due process, wrote White House counsel Pat Cipollone. President Trump cannot permit his administration to participate in this partisan inquiry under these circumstances. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the move amounts to obstruction of justice. This letter is manifestly wrong and is simply another unlawful attempt to hide the facts, Pelosi said in a statement. Democrats also issuing a subpoena for Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, after the State Department directed him not to testify to the committee earlier Tuesday. Sondland is of interest because of what he knew about the investigation into Joe Biden and his son and the holdup of aid to Ukraine. Tuesday's Schiff revealed details about a text exchange involving Sondland and others.
We know from the text messages that Ambassador Sondland was in discussion with Ukrainian counterparts, with fellow diplomatic personnel, and the president.
Texts show another U.S. diplomat to Ukraine was concerned, but Sondland texted the president was clear, no quid pro quo. House Republicans are defending the president.
What we see in this impeachment is a kangaroo court, and Chairman Schiff is acting like a malicious Captain Kangaroo.
And as the impeachment inquiry continues, former GOP Representative Trey Gowdy is considering joining the president's legal team as outside counsel.
Meanwhile, new revelations about the whistleblower who set off the impeachment inquiry. The Washington Examiner reports that the Inspector General says the whistleblower had a professional relationship with one of the Democratic candidates in the 2020 election. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, I took a look at the Constitution. I want you to say what it says. This is what the Constitution says about impeachment. Article 1, Section 2. The House of Representatives, shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Now, when you look at that, certain legal scholars have said, and I agree with them, that the impeachment process needs to be the whole House. The House of Representatives shall have sole power of impeachment, not Adam Schiff, not the Speaker. Now, what we have here is the Speaker in a clearly partisan manner calling for an impeachment inquiry without taking a vote in the House. So she does not have the support of the House. The minority members have not been allowed to speak. The last time that we've had only 2 impeachments, and in both instances there was a bipartisan agreement, Democrats and Republicans, to get the thing together. This isn't something that should be done in a partisan fashion, and certainly not some committee chairman like Adam Schiff. So that's the way it is. Now, once again, the House has the power. All the House. There has to be a vote in the House. And so the president is saying, you get a vote, you get everybody on record, and then we'll consider you're legitimate. Until that, all it is the Speaker and a couple of committee chairs. It's not valid according to the Constitution, in my opinion. Well, in other news, Senator Lindsey Graham has called for a day of prayer for the Kurds as Turkey is getting ready to invade. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington.
Thanks, Pat. And that call for prayer comes as Turkey is building up forces on the border of a Kurdish enclave in northeast Syria. The country's defense minister says they're preparing for an invasion. Meanwhile, the Kurdish militia is getting ready to defend the territory. About 50 American forces pulled out of the area Monday after President Trump announced the U.S. won't stand in the way of Turkey's move. That's led to criticism from Republican lawmakers and evangelical leaders. Tony Perkins serves as the chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. On CBN's Faith Nation program, he said it's crucial to defend the territory's fledgling democracy, which puts an emphasis on religious freedom.
Religious freedom of the American sort, meaning that you can not only believe a certain way, but you can practice that faith and you can change your faith, which is very unique outside of Israel in the Middle East.
Tuesday, the White House held a security briefing on the situation for House and Senate leaders, and Pat had also announced Turkey's President Erdogan will visit Washington next month.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have called for recognition, a Trump declaration of the independence of Kurdistan. The Kurds are about 35 million people. They're the only major ethnic group, and this is the territory they would have. And down in that map before you is something called Kirkuk. Kirkuk is one of the most prolific oil fields in the world. It has billions and billions of barrels of oil in reserves, and the production is something in the neighborhood of 500,000 barrels a day. The president thinks the Kurds are just freeloaders and they don't have any money. The truth is they have plenty of money if it's made available to them. And that would be a break, if you will, on the ambitions of the Islamic group in Turkey. It would hold back the Russians from coming in. It would block the Syrians from the Syrians from Assad forces, and also Iran, which is a threat. The Kurds can defend themselves. The Peshmerga can do it. They are our allies and our friends, and we absolutely cannot abandon them. It would be shocking. And Senator Graham has called for a day of prayer, but he said so courageously, we'll have nobody standing with us if we abandon those people who fought beside us. Now the question that rises before the Supreme Court is who is a man and who is a woman? John.
Pat, the rise of transgenderism is complicating laws on sex discrimination. The Supreme Court heard arguments on the issue Tuesday. At the core of the cases is what the word sex means when it comes to the law. In the past, sex discrimination law has always referred to male and female. The ACLU's argument before the court would end gender-specific policies in the workplace, including separate showers, bathrooms, and dress codes for men and women. The justices seem to express concern with that position. Penny Nance of Concerned Women for America says women in prisons and shelters are scared they'll be forced into intimate quarters with transgender men.
Women in domestic shelters are filing suit over the fact that suddenly these women who have been so hurt are now having to share showers and common space with men. And so this is a serious issue.
The decisions in these cases are expected to be released in 2020. Well, the left-leaning policies of Democratic leaders has caused some to begin leaving the party, including one former Democrat who's leading a grassroots campaign encouraging those who feel abandoned by the party to just walk away. CBN's Jenna Browder sat down with the founder of the movement.
What would it take for you to walk away from your social circle, your friends, even some of your own family members? That's what Brandon Strzok did when he decided to leave the Democratic Party.
Never lose faith that people can change.
That's his story.
If I can change, anyone can change.
Now an outspoken advocate for President Trump, Strzok was once a lifelong Democrat. Tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background.
I live in New York City, and I was a former liberal, a former Democrat my entire life.
He says things changed after the 2016 election.
I was just absolutely shocked and I think kind of horrified in trying to understand how could anyone vote for this terrible person? And I was going on social media constantly asking this question. And that's when finally somebody reached out to me, January of 2017, with a social media clip that very clearly demonstrated how CNN and some of these liberal media outlets had been so dishonest and isolated these moments out of context and created a narrative surrounding Donald Trump and his supporters, which was completely untrue.
After a year of reflection and research, Strzok says he left the Democrats. Then in 2018...
So I created something called the Walkaway Campaign, encouraging people to tell their own stories and create their own testimonials about why they too are walking away and what they're walking away from. And it just exploded.
When I listen to these politicians today, it's crazy. But the Democratic Party never really felt right.
I mean, at this point, we have hundreds of thousands of people who have joined this movement and tens of thousands of video and written testimonials from people who just feel that the Democratic Party has become too extreme, has become too hateful, too divisive, and they don't want it anymore.
Strzok says he and his team are getting out on the road ahead of 2020.
We do the Black Americans Town Hall. We do Hispanic Americans, Jewish Americans, LGBT Americans. We're talking to groups that are typically voting Democrat in large blocks and saying, listen, you have a choice.
And that's his message. He says they're not trying to make all of these people Republicans, but to get them to step back and really consider why they vote the way they do. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Pat, he's got an interesting story.
Very interesting story. Now we're going to have a question of what you call the law of unintended consequences. It seemed that people who are mentally ill should not be locked up. So we passed a law that says they should be set free. So that's nice. So we set them free.